Thank you to PSI for inviting us. I'm delighted to be part of this discussion. I do not have a slide presentation, so I'm afraid you have the misfortune of having to look at me for the next 10 minutes. I think the topic is quite timely and interesting in assessing the impact of what is happening, global services agreements around the world, how they impact on individual countries, and certainly, of course, the multilateral trading system. Let me start by saying that I can only speak on the basis of our experiences as South Africa and the region that we are in, and part of the regional trading arrangements that we are in. And I hope that sharing our experience will then enable you to make your own assessment about what the potential impacts of global services agreements may or may not be. We all know that there is legal provision for members of the WTO to enter into free trade arrangements. In the area of services, it is Article 5 that makes that provision, that gives countries the legal cover to not grant MFN treatment to other members on the basis of regional arrangements. However, we also do know, as we have heard, we also do know that there is beginning to emerge a different view, and that is that let us have agreements that may meet the legal test of Article 5, but due to their nature and character, will have in our view, as South Africa, an undesirable impact on the multilateral trading system in general. And some of the reasons for our concern have been mentioned by Scott in his presentation. What we have seen and what our experience is, and having looked at some agreements around the world, and particularly the one that is under negotiation, is that you have a group of countries who are saying we want to have a much higher level ambition agreement than it is in the WTO. You have countries that are saying that it's unworkable. The negotiation in the WTO on services is unworkable, and there's a small minority of developing countries that are retarding progress, and therefore let us take this negotiation outside. That is their interpretation. Now, if you look at the GATS, and one of the reasons why we emphasize the importance of the multilateral trading system is that the GATS does have flexibilities that suit the needs of developing countries. The GATS does take into account differentials in levels of development, and it does have a particular objective to integrate developing countries into the global services trading system in a way that is commensurate with their level of development. In our view, those flexibilities are absolutely critical in maintaining them and in allowing us to participate in the multilateral trading system. If, on the other hand, there is a different focus, and the focus is mercantilist, if the focus is mercantilist, if you have an expectation to bind autonomous liberalization that countries undertake, and as Scott said, if the approach is to have a ratcheting up effect, so if you structure the agreement in such a way that, in our view, you weaken the flexibilities that are in the GATS, we do not think that that is in our interest as a developing country, as South Africa. Because we think that it weakens the multilateral trading system, which to us is absolutely sacrosanct, and which we think we have to protect and defend. There are some other approaches that are somewhat different, but their legal structure is, of course, regional. In our region, we do have a services negotiation that is going on, but we do not have a ratcheting up mechanism, and we do not have a standstill provision, and we do not have a negative list to undertaking commitments. Our approach is developmental regionalism. We want to integrate one another in a way that we facilitate development and growth above mercantilism, straight mercantilism as we see it. So again, in our minds, the approach is different, the imperatives are different, and the objectives are different. And that is why we have a different view to those members whose right it is, I have to emphasize, whose right it is to enter into the TISA agreement and the negotiations there, consistent with their own national development objectives as they see them. And so what I'm trying to suggest is that although there may be different ways of entering into regional arrangements consistent from the letter of the law of the GATS, there are ways of doing it, but our assessment is that the implication on the multilateral trading system is different. It is not a positive one in our view. And secondly, we think that moving in that direction does not strengthen the multilateral trading system in the way in which we should be doing. And we have to find a way of dealing with these approaches, and we have to find a way of engaging with one another as members to see how we can come back to the multilateral trading system, so that we uphold the flexibilities of the GATS, and we uphold the GATS as a global liberalizing, trade liberalizing instrument that gives all members, big and small, the same flexibilities. It is going to be difficult. I don't know if it is politically feasible because, as we know, there are some members who have gone down a different path for their own reasons. But it is certainly something that we think we should continue to strive for. That, I think, is really the main concern around some of these agreements is the impact on the multilateral trading system. I don't want to be too repetitive, Daniel, on my comments, but again, let me just emphasize that countries have their own national objectives and their own ways of doing things, but this is how we see it from our own experience. We don't have the same kinds of high ambition in our region, high ambition agreements, which we think have a different, a negative impact on the flexibilities of the GATS. And we certainly would not want to be in a position where one day the GATS is amended in a way that makes it consistent with an agreement that was negotiated and undertaken outside of the WTO. That would be a problem for not only for South Africa, I'm sure, but it would be a problem for many other developing countries who thus far have been able to participate and undertake commitments in the GATS only because of those flexibilities that are there. Only because of those flexibilities. only because there's no expectation to commit on the basis of a negative list approach, and because there is no requirement to do the range of things that we have heard. Some of them Scott mentioned. That is why many developing countries have been able to take part and liberalize their services commitments in the legal framework of the GATS. And so if we change that framework, then we will be doing something that is precisely the opposite of what is in the objective of the GATS itself, and that is to facilitate the participation of developing countries in the multilateral trading system, particularly in the multilateral services trading system. So that is really something that we fear, and we hope that it doesn't come to that. We are committed to the multilateral trading system, and we would invite members to demonstrate the same commitment and defend the multilateral trading system. So let me leave it there for now, Daniel. I think I'm at just about 10 minutes. Thank you.